The stars looked peaceful tonight, but they were filled with warships celebrating victory. Thousands of alien vessels floated in the dark space of the Kaldrek system, their hulls painted with lights and colors. Inside those ships, soldiers from a dozen different species cheered and embraced. They had won. After 3 long years of fighting, they had finally defeated the Scourge. Admiral Vexarian stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Pride of Zenthari. His scales gleamed under the soft blue lights as he watched the celebration displays through the viewport. Ships fired colorful plasma bursts into space, creating temporary fireworks that bloomed and died in silence. His communication officers were overwhelmed with messages of congratulation from every corner of the Galactic Council. "Admiral, the Council requests a victory speech," his aide announced, her voice excited and proud. Vexarian nodded slowly. He activated the main transmission channel, and his image was broadcast to every ship in the Armada. "Warriors of the Council," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of service. "Today we have accomplished what many thought impossible. The Scourge, the hive mind that consumed our colonies and killed millions of our people, has been destroyed. Their queenship lies broken among the debris. We have secured peace for our children and our children's children." The cheers that followed were deafening even through the communication systems. Vexarian allowed himself a small smile. It had been a brutal campaign, but it was over. The insectoid monsters that appeared from the outer dark 3 years ago were finally gone. No more worlds would burn under their acid and teeth. Far from the celebrating fleet, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, Commander Iris Chen watched through very different eyes. Her ship, the Whisper, was barely larger than a shuttle, covered in stealth plating that bent light and absorbed scanner waves. She had been stationed here for 2 months, observing the Galactic Council's war against the Scourge. Earth had been watching the galaxy for 50 years, ever since humanity developed faster than light travel. But the Council didn't know humans existed. The few times human scout ships had been detected, the Council dismissed them as sensor ghosts or primitive vessels not worth investigating. The galaxy considered Earth's region of space to be empty, worthless, and far too remote to matter. Chen had orders to observe and report. Nothing more. She watched the celebration with a mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to congratulate them. Another part felt frustrated that Earth was still hiding in the shadows, but then her sensors picked up something that made her blood run cold. "Computer, enhance Sector 77 Alpha," she commanded quietly. The screen zoomed in on a section of the debris field, kilometers away from the celebrating fleet. There, among the twisted metal and organic matter that had once been Scourge ships, something moved. Chen's fingers flew across her console, refining the image.
Checking and rechecking her readings. "Oh no," she whispered. "A Scourge vessel."
Damaged but intact, was slowly moving away from the battlefield. It wasn't just any ship. Chen's database identified it immediately by its size and organic signature. It was a queen ship, the reproductive core of a Scourge hive. The Council thought they had destroyed it, but they had only crippled it, and it was charging its jump drive. Chen immediately calculated its trajectory. Her stomach turned. The queen ship was preparing to jump toward the Helix Nebula, a region of space containing 7 massive colony worlds with a combined population of over 7 billion Council citizens. She had to warn them. "Computer, open emergency channel 2. Council command frequency," she ordered. "Warning, transmission will reveal our position and violate observation protocols," and the computer replied in its neutral tone. "I know. Do it anyway." The channel opened. Chen took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "Council Armada, this is Terran Vessel Whisper. You have a Scourge queen ship escaping your perimeter at coordinates 77 Alpha 9. It's heading for the Helix Nebula. I repeat, the queen is alive and jumping to a populated region." On the Pride of Zenthari, the bridge fell silent as the strange transmission came through. Vexarian's aide looked confused. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown vessel. They claim there's a surviving Scourge ship." Vexarian's good mood evaporated. "Unknown vessel? What species?" "They called themselves Terran, sir. We have no record of that designation in Council databases." Vexarian's eyes narrowed. He pulled up the tactical display and examined Sector 77 Alpha. His sensors showed only debris. "There's nothing there. Run a full spectrum scan." The scan came back negative. "Sir, there are no active vessels in that sector. No Scourge signatures detected." Vexarian felt anger replace his suspicion. Someone was trying to ruin this moment of triumph with false alarms. Perhaps a rival faction within the Council, or maybe just a malfunctioning automated probe broadcasting old warnings. Ignore the transmission, he ordered. Some primitive automated defense system probably got triggered by our celebration displays. There's nothing out there. Focus on the victory ceremonies. In the whisper, Chen watched helplessly as the Council fleet completely ignored her warning. She could see the Queen ship's jump drive reaching full power. Her hands gripped the edge of her console. They're not listening, she said to herself. They're not listening and millions are going to die. She considered her options. She could jump to the Helix Nebula herself and try to warn them, but the Whisper was a scout ship with no weapons capable of damaging a Queen ship. She could break silence completely and reveal Earth's existence, but her orders were absolute. Humanity wasn't ready for first contact. The Queen ship jumped. Space rippled and bent as it vanished into faster-than-light travel. Chen immediately calculated the travel time. The Queen would reach the Helix Nebula in approximately 3 weeks. She sent one more transmission to the Council fleet, this time with more urgency. Council Armada, this is Whisper. The Queen ship has jumped. Helix Nebula is the target. You have 3 weeks. Please respond. But the celebration continued. No one was listening to a ghost in the dark. Chen sat back in her chair and began composing an emergency report to Earth Command. Her hands shook slightly as she typed. She had just watched the Council make a fatal mistake, and there was nothing she could do to stop what was coming next. 3 weeks later, all communication from the Helix Nebula stopped. Every transmission, every data feed, every distress call simply ended. 7 billion voices went silent in a single day. The Scourge hadn't died. They had evolved. And they were coming back stronger than before. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Grand Chamber on Zenthari Prime, all speaking at once, all demanding answers. The massive display screen showed the same horrifying image on repeat. The last transmission from Helix Station 7, showing dark shapes blotting out the stars before the feed cut to static. Ambassador Thel Quinn, the Council's diplomatic leader, struggled to maintain order. Her translator device could barely keep up with the multiple languages being shouted across the chamber. Please, honored members, we must remain calm. But calm was impossible. The Helix Nebula was gone. 7 billion people, multiple colony worlds, defensive stations, trade hubs, everything simply destroyed in a matter of days. And the worst part was that they had no idea how it happened so quickly. Vexarian stood before the Council, stripped of his admiral rank, wearing simple gray clothing instead of his decorated uniform. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. The weight of failure hung on him like chains. Explain to us again how this happened, demanded Council Member Jar, his tentacles writhing with barely controlled rage. You declared the Scourge defeated. You celebrated, and now billions are dead. Vexarian's voice was hollow. Our sensors detected no surviving Scourge vessels. We performed standard verification scans. Everything showed the enemy was destroyed. Everything except the warning you received, Thelquin said quietly, pulling up a data file. This transmission from an unknown vessel calling itself Terran. The one you ignored. The chamber erupted again. Vexarian felt each accusation like a physical blow. He had reviewed that transmission 1,000 times since the Helix Nebula went dark. The unknown voice had been right about everything. The coordinates, the timing, the target, and he had dismissed it as a sensor ghost. Who are these Terrans? Another council member demanded. Why don't we have records of them? We're investigating, Thelquin replied. The transmission origin point has been analyzed. It came from a region of space we classified as uninhabited, near a yellow star called Sol. Before the discussion could continue, every alarm in the council chamber began screaming. Military priority alerts flashed red across all displays. The council's military commander, General Crix, appeared on the screens, his face showing barely controlled panic. The Scourge has returned, he announced without preamble. A fleet 10 times larger than anything we faced before. They're hitting 3 colony clusters simultaneously. And council members, they've adapted. Our energy weapons are no longer effective. The chamber fell silent. Then everyone started speaking at once again. But this time the voices carried pure terror rather than anger. Thousands of light years away, on a blue and green planet orbiting that yellow star called Sol, a very different meeting was taking place. President Amara Okafor stood at the head of a long table in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. Around her sat the leaders of Earth's unified government and the commanders of the Terran Defense Force. The room was quiet, serious and focused. The Council's second armada was destroyed 6 hours ago, Admiral Marcus Zhang reported, pulling up holographic displays showing the battle data Earth scouts had collected. Casualties are estimated at 70,000 ships and 400,000 personnel. The Scourge has demonstrated adaptation to energy-based weapons and conventional faster-than-light tactics. President Okafor studied the data with tired eyes. How long until they reach Earth? If they continue at current expansion rate, 18 months. Maybe less if they detect our transmissions. So we have a choice, the President said slowly. Hide and hope they miss us or reveal ourselves and fight. General Hammond, commander of Earth's ground forces, shook his head. With respect, Madam President, those aren't really choices. If the Scourge consumes the galaxy, Earth becomes a lonely island in a dead ocean, and eventually they'll find us anyway. Plus, we warned them, added Commander Chen, who had returned to Earth after her observation mission. We tried to prevent this. They ignored us, but that doesn't change the fact that we knew this was coming. Zhang leaned forward. We've spent 50 years building a fleet based on different principles than the Council's technology. We designed every ship assuming we'd have to fight alone against superior numbers. Our quantum drives, our kinetic weapons, our tactical doctrine, all of it was built for a war of survival. Are you saying we can win? President Okafor asked. I'm saying we can make a difference. The Council fights with energy shields and plasma weapons. Beautiful technology, very advanced, but the Scourge adapted to it because they've been fighting it for 3 years. Our weapons are different, primitive by their standards. Mass drivers, nuclear warheads, tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic speeds. The Scourge has never encountered kinetic weapons at this scale. The President looked around the table. I need a vote. Do we reveal humanity to the galaxy and commit our forces? Or do we maintain the observation protocol and stay hidden? The vote took 30 minutes. It was close, but ultimately humanity chose to act. President Okafor nodded slowly. Admiral Zhang, you have authorization to deploy the First Fleet. Show the galaxy that Earth exists and show the Scourge that they picked the wrong fight. Zhang stood and saluted. For humanity and for all sentient life, we won't let them down. The First Fleet had been built in the orbital shipyards around Mars, Jupiter's moons, and in the asteroid belt. 300 dreadnoughts, each one named after humanity's darkest moments and greatest battles. The Verdun, the Hiroshima, the Stalingrad, the Somme, the Thermopylae. Every name carried weight, a reminder of what humanity had survived. They were massive ships built with angular armor plating and bristling with weapons. They looked brutal compared to the elegant curves of Council vessels. They looked like warships built by people who understood the cost of defeat. Each dreadnought carried a crew of 800, a mix of military personnel and civilian specialists. They had trained for this moment their entire lives, even though most had never seen actual combat. They knew the stories, though. They knew what humanity was capable of when survival was on the line. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, and watched as the fleet assembled in formation around him. 300 ships representing 50 years of preparation and hope that they would never be needed. All ships report ready for jump, sir, his communications officer reported. Zhang took a deep breath. They were about to reveal humanity's existence to a galaxy at war. There would be no going back after this. Earth would either be welcomed as saviors or feared as a new threat. Either way, hiding was no longer an option. Fleet command to all vessels, Zhang said clearly. Calculate jump coordinates for the tiers of Andros. That's where the Council is making their last stand. That's where we show the galaxy that humanity stands with the light against the dark. 300 quantum drives powered up simultaneously, creating ripples in space-time that would be detected across multiple star systems. The Terran First Fleet prepared to jump into a battle that would change galactic history forever. In the Council chamber on Zenthari Prime, sensors detected massive spatial anomalies forming near the tiers of Andros battlefield. Felquin stared at the readings, confusion clear on her face. What is that? She whispered. No one had an answer. But they were about to find out. The tiers of Andros asteroid field was named for the thousands of Council soldiers who died defending it in an ancient war. Today it was about to earn that name all over again. Council Captain Seln watched her tactical display with growing despair. Her ship, the Morning Light, was down to 40% shields and running low on plasma charges. Around her, what remained of the Council's Third Armada fought desperately against impossible odds. The Scourge had learned. Their organic hulls now absorbed energy weapons like sponges, and their numbers seemed endless. Captain, the defensive line is collapsing on the eastern flank, her tactical officer reported, his voice cracking with stress. Seln looked at the display. Red icons representing Scourge ships vastly outnumbered the blue dots of Council vessels. Ships were dying every few seconds, vanishing from the display as they were torn apart by acid sprays and organic projectiles. The Council had maybe an hour left before total defeat. All ships fall back to secondary positions, she ordered. knowing it was pointless. There were no secondary positions. This was the last line of defense before the Scourge reached the core worlds. If they broke through here, billions more would die. Then something strange happened. Her sensor officer suddenly sat up straight, confusion on his face. "Captain, I'm detecting spatial anomalies forming behind the Scourge fleet. Multiple signatures. Big ones," Seln frowned. "The Scourge don't use conventional jump technology. Are you sure your equipment isn't damaged? Running diagnostics now, but Captain, these readings are off the scale. Whatever's coming through is massive." The Scourge seemed to notice too. Seln watched as approximately half of the enemy fleet suddenly turned away from the Council ships, redirecting toward empty space behind them. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. Then space tore open. Not the gentle ripple of normal, faster-than-light travel. This was violent, like reality itself was being ripped apart. Seln's sensors screamed warnings as 300 quantum tiers opened simultaneously, flooding her displays with error messages. 300 shapes emerged from those tiers. Ships. Massive ships. But they looked nothing like Council vessels with their smooth curves and artistic designs. These were brutal, angular, covered in thick armor plating that seemed designed purely for function over form. They looked like hammers built to smash through walls. "What are those?" Seln whispered. Before anyone could answer, the unknown ships opened fire. The sound of mass drivers firing doesn't travel in space, but Seln could see the results. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons, accelerated to half the speed of light. They hit Scourge ships like the hammer of an angry god. Organic hulls that absorbed energy weapons simply exploded when hit by kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The Scourge bioships that had been nearly invulnerable moments ago were torn apart by the dozens. One of the unknown vessels fired what looked like primitive nuclear warheads. 3 fusion explosions blossomed in the void, and when the light faded, an entire Scourge formation was simply gone. "Who are they?" Seln's tactical officer asked, his voice full of awe and fear. Then a voice came across all Council frequencies. It was calm, professional, and spoke perfect Galactic Standard with a strange accent. "Terran Defense Command to Council Armada. Maintain your defensive positions. We have the field, Terran." The unknown species that had tried to warn Vexarian. They were real, and they had brought an entire fleet. Admiral Vexarian, restored to command out of desperate necessity, watched the battle from his rebuilt flagship with emotions he couldn't begin to process. The Terran ships were fighting in a way he had never seen before. They didn't form traditional battle lines. They didn't slowly advance behind shield walls. They jumped, short-range quantum jumps, appearing inside the Scourge formation, firing devastating broadside volleys at point-blank range, then jumping out before the Scourge could react. It was chaos, unpredictable and absolutely terrifying to watch. The Scourge, who had adapted to every Council tactic, had no counter for this aggressive, seemingly random assault pattern. "Sir, one of the Terran vessels is hailing us directly," his communications officer said. "Put them through." A human face appeared on his screen. The being looked relatively similar to many humanoid species, but there was something different in the eyes. A hardness, a determination that came from a species that had clawed its way up without help. "Admiral Vexarian, I presume," the human said. It was the same voice from the general transmission. "I'm Admiral Marcus Jang of Earth's First Fleet. We're here to help." Vexarian struggled to find words. "You're the ones who sent the warning." "The one I ignored. We can discuss that later. Right now, I need your ships to focus on the Scourge vessels trying to break through your defensive line. Leave the main fleet to us." "You have 300 ships against thousands," Vexarian protested. "You'll be overwhelmed." Jang smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Admiral, my species has been preparing for a war of survival for our entire existence. We built these ships assuming we'd face impossible odds. Trust me, 300 is more than enough." The transmission ended, and Vexarian watched as the Terran fleet began a coordinated assault that looked like controlled chaos. A ship called the Thermopylae jumped directly into the path of a Scourge capital vessel and fired a sustained kinetic barrage. The massive Scourge ship, larger than most Council stations, was torn in half by the sheer kinetic force. Another Terran vessel, the Verdun, deployed what looked like old-fashioned missiles. But when they hit, Vexarian's sensors detected electromagnetic pulses powerful enough to disable organic systems. The Scourge ships went dark, their bioelectrical networks fried, and then were picked off by coordinated railgun fire from other human vessels. The battle lasted 6 hours. At the end, the Scourge fleet at Tears of Andros wasn't just defeated. It was annihilated. Not a single Scourge vessel escaped. Captain Seln stared at her tactical display in disbelief. The space around her was full of debris, both Scourge and Council ships. But the Terran vessels hung in formation, damaged but intact. They had lost maybe 20 ships while destroying thousands. A transmission came through to all Council ships. Admiral Zhang's face appeared again, and this time Seln could see the exhaustion beneath his professional composure. Council vessels, this is Terran Command. We're transmitting coordinates for wounded ships that need immediate assistance. We have medical supplies and repair equipment available. Let's get your people home safe. Vexarian opened a private channel to Zhang. The human admiral looked at him with those hard, determined eyes. You came, Vexarian said simply. After I ignored your warning. After the Council dismissed your people as primitives, you still came. Zhang was quiet for a moment. My people have a saying, Admiral. It's better to light a candle than curse the darkness. Commander Chen tried to warn you. You didn't listen. A lot of people died because of that. But holding a grudge won't bring them back, and it won't stop the Scourge from killing more. There are more Scourge out there, Vexarian said. It wasn't a question, we know. Our scouts have been tracking them. The Queen that escaped has established 4 breeding worlds in unclaimed space. In a month, maybe less, they'll launch another attack. Bigger than this one. Vexarian felt the weight of command pressing down on him again. We can't fight them alone. Even with your help, we barely survived this battle. Zhang nodded slowly. Then I guess it's time Earth and the Council had a formal meeting. Fair warning though, Admiral. We're done being treated like primitives. If we're going to help save the galaxy, we want a real seat at the table. For the first time in weeks, Vexarian felt something like hope. I think that can be arranged. Your people just saved millions of lives. The Council would be foolish not to listen. Zhang smiled slightly. Admiral, you'd be surprised how often people are foolish. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, let's focus on keeping everyone alive. The transmission ended. Vexarian looked out at the stars, at the Terran Dreadnoughts hanging in space like monuments to a species the galaxy had never known existed. Ships named after battles and disasters, crewed by beings who fought like they had nothing left to lose. His aide approached cautiously. Sir, what do we tell the Council? Vexarian thought about the question. About the warning he ignored. About the billions who died. About the strange humans who came anyway, despite having every reason to leave the galaxy to its fate. Tell them the truth, he said quietly. Tell them we're not alone anymore. Tell them humanity sends its regards. The Joint Command Station orbiting Zenthari Prime was hastily constructed, a temporary structure designed to house both Council and Terran leadership while negotiations took place. Ambassador Thelquin had never felt so out of her depth in her 3 decades of diplomatic service. The Council representatives filled one side of the massive conference room, wearing their formal diplomatic robes and ceremonial weapons. They represented hundreds of species and thousands of years of galactic tradition. On the other side sat the human delegation, wearing simple military uniforms with minimal decoration. They looked plain, almost boring compared to the Council's pageantry. But Thelquin had seen the battle reports. She knew what those plain uniforms represented. The Galactic Council recognizes Earth and its people. She began formally, reading from the prepared statement. We offer humanity provisional membership status, with observer rights and limited participation in Council affairs. This is the traditional path for newly discovered species, allowing time for cultural integration and technological assessment. Admiral Zhang, sitting at the center of the human delegation, didn't move. His expression didn't change. He simply waited for her to finish. In recognition of your assistance during the current crisis, Thelquin continued, we are prepared to accelerate the provisional period from the standard 50 years to perhaps 20 years, with full membership considered after that time. Zhang looked at Commander Chen, who sat beside him as cultural advisor. She whispered something. Zhang nodded and then looked directly at Thelquin. No, he said simply. The room fell silent. Council members looked at each other in confusion. No one refused Council membership. It was an honor, a privilege granted to species that had proven themselves worthy. I don't think you understand, Council member Jar said, his tentacles coiling in agitation. We are offering you a place among the civilized species of the galaxy. This is not something to be refused. Then let me be clear, Zhang said, his voice calm but firm. We don't want provisional anything. We don't want observer status. We want a full seat at this table with full voting rights and full participation in all Council affairs. Or we pack up our ships and go home. Vexarian, sitting among the Council military commanders, felt a headache forming. Admiral Zhang, you cannot simply demand equal status with civilizations that have existed for thousands of years. There are protocols, traditions. Zhang pulled up a holographic display between the two groups. It showed star maps with red markers indicating locations throughout unclaimed space. While you've been debating protocols, our scout ships have been working. These markers show the locations of 4 Scourge breeding worlds. Each one is protected by organic defense networks that regenerate faster than your energy weapons can damage them. He zoomed in on one of the locations, showing detailed scans. Your plasma weapons and energy beams work on shields and armor. They're designed to overwhelm defensive systems. But the Scourge don't have shields. They have organic hulls that absorb and adapt. You can't burn them out because they heal faster than you can damage them. Another image appeared showing a Terran weapons test. Our kinetic bombardment works differently. Tungsten rods accelerated to 0.5 light speed. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lances. These don't burn. They shatter. They pulverize. They turn organic matter into vapor and turn planets into molten glass. Thelquin stared at the display, understanding dawning. You can destroy the breeding worlds. We can sterilize them, Zhang corrected. Completely, permanently. But here's the thing, Ambassador. We're not going to do it for free while being treated like children who need supervision. You would hold the galaxy hostage? Char demanded, his voice rising in anger. Commander Chen spoke up for the first time, her voice carrying an edge that surprised everyone. We're not holding anyone hostage. We're asking for basic respect. Your council has existed for thousands of years, and that's impressive. But my species has been observing you for 50 years. We learned your languages. We studied your tactics. We watched you make mistakes, and we learned from them. She stood, facing the council representatives directly. We built an entire fleet based on the assumption that we would have to fight alone against impossible odds. We designed weapons specifically to counter threats that your energy-based technology couldn't handle, and when the crisis came, we didn't ask for payment or favors. We showed up. We bled, we died. 20 ships and 16,000 people at Tears of Andros alone. The room was absolutely silent now. Chen continued, her voice softer but no less intense. So no, we're not going to sit in the corner as observers while you debate our worthiness. We proved our worth in blood and fire. Either you accept us as equals or you handle the Scourge yourselves. Vexarian found himself nodding slowly. He had seen the Terran fleet fight. He had watched ships named after human disasters charge into certain death without hesitation. These were not primitives begging for acceptance. These were warriors who had earned their place. I support granting full membership, Vexarian said suddenly, surprising everyone, including himself. The humans saved my fleet. They saved millions of lives. If we cannot recognize that, then our protocols mean nothing. Thelquin looked at him in shock. Admiral, you cannot be serious. The procedures exist for good reason. We cannot simply abandon thousands of years of tradition. Tradition? Vexarian's voice grew harder. I followed tradition at Caldrex. I ignored a warning because it came from an unknown source. Billions died because I value tradition over evidence. If we make that mistake again, we deserve whatever happens to us. Other council members began to argue, but Zhang raised his hand. Let me make this simpler. I'm not asking you to love us. I'm not asking you to trust us. I'm asking you to let us help save your civilization. And in exchange, we want the same rights and respect you give each other. He pulled up another display. We have 3 fleets, 900 dreadnoughts total. The first fleet is here. The second and third are currently protecting Earth. If you accept us as full members, all 3 fleets deploy to help defend council space. If not, the first fleet goes home and you're on your own. You would leave billions to die over politics? Thelquin asked, her voice full of disbelief. Chen answered, her expression sad but determined. We would leave you to face the consequences of your choices, just like you left the Helix Nebula to face the consequences of ignoring our warning. We want to help. We're willing to help, but we won't be second-class citizens in a war we're fighting on equal terms. The debate raged for hours. Council members argued about precedent, about the risks of granting too much authority too quickly, about the potential dangers of a species they barely knew. But in the end, the military reports couldn't be ignored. The Scourge was coming, and the Terrans had proven they could fight them effectively. The vote was close, but humanity was granted full council membership. The first species in galactic history to skip the observation period entirely. Zhang stood and offered his hand to Thelquin. She looked at it uncertainly, then remembered human customs and shook it. Thank you, Ambassador. You won't regret this. I hope not, Admiral, for all our sakes. As the formal negotiations concluded, Vexarian approached Zhang privately. Your Commander Chen mentioned watching us for 50 years. How many other secrets does your species have? Zhang smiled slightly. Admiral, we're human. We're paranoid, aggressive, and we plan for worst-case scenarios. We have contingency plans for scenarios that will probably never happen. We built weapons designed to fight threats that didn't exist yet. Does that scare you? Honestly? Yes. Good. It should scare the Scourge too. Zhang pulled up a tactical display. Now let's talk about how we're going to destroy those breeding worlds before they can launch another attack. Vexarian looked at the maps, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not quite hope, but something close. Determination, perhaps, or just the knowledge that he wasn't facing the darkness alone anymore. They worked through the night, planning humanity's first official military operation as council members. The breeding worlds would be targeted simultaneously. The council fleet would provide support and evacuation for any populated areas nearby. The Terran fleet would provide the firepower to ensure nothing survived. As dawn broke over Xanthari Prime, Chen stood looking out a viewport at the stars. Vexarian joined her, following her gaze. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Home," she said quietly. "I'm wondering if Earth made the right choice revealing ourselves. We were safe in the shadows, unknown. Now we're committed to this war. Do you regret it?" She was quiet for a long moment. "No, but I'm afraid of what it will cost us. Every human ship has families waiting back home. Every soldier has someone who loves them. And we're about to send them into a battle that might kill them all." Vexarian understood that feeling. He had sent too many people into battles they didn't return from. "If it helps, Commander, your Admiral Zhang was right about one thing. You've earned your place here. Whatever happens next, the galaxy will remember that humans stood with us when it mattered most." Chen smiled slightly. "That's what scares me, Admiral. Being remembered means you can't hide anymore. For better or worse, humanity just stepped onto the galactic stage. There's no going back now." In deep space, sensors were already detecting movement. The Scourge was preparing for one final push. The combined fleet assembled at the edge of the Veil Nebula, like a wall of steel and determination. 5,000 council ships formed defensive lines, their shields creating overlapping fields of protective energy. Behind them, 900 Terran Dreadnoughts hung in loose formations, ready to move at a moment's notice. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of the Defiant, studying the tactical display with Commander Chen and Admiral Vexarian. The three of them had spent the last week planning for this moment, trying to find common ground between two very different military doctrines. "The Council fleet will hold the line," Vexarian explained, highlighting the defensive positions. "Our shields can absorb initial attacks and give your ships time to maneuver." Zhang nodded slowly. "And my dreadnoughts will operate as rapid response units. When a section of your line gets hit hard, we jump in, hit them fast, and jump out. Hit and run tactics." "It goes against every instinct I have," Vexarian admitted. "Council doctrine is built on formation warfare and coordinated advances. Your tactics are chaos." "Controlled chaos," Chen corrected with a slight smile. "There's a difference." Before anyone could respond, every sensor in the fleet started screaming warnings. Chen looked at her display and felt her blood run cold. "Contact." Multiple contacts. Thousands of them. The Scourge arrived like a living nightmare made manifest. The swarm was so massive it literally blocked out the stars behind it. Tens of thousands of organic ships, each one pulsing with bioluminescence, creating a wall of hostile life that filled the void. Zhang immediately opened fleet-wide communications. "All Terran vessels, this is Admiral Zhang. Execute Plan Ragnarok. All council ships maintain defensive formations. Here they come." The battle began. The Scourge hit the council defensive line like a tsunami of teeth and acid. Energy shields flared and sparked as organic projectiles and bioplasma slammed into them. Council ships fired back with everything they had, their plasma lances and particle beams cutting through the Scourge swarm. But the Scourge had learned. New organic compounds in their hulls absorbed energy weapons more efficiently than before. Ships that would have been destroyed in seconds now took minutes to kill, and for every one they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. "Eastern flank is being overwhelmed," Captain Seln reported from the morning light. "We need support now." Zhang checked his tactical display. "Second Fleet, jump to grid Epsilon 7. Give them covering fire." 300 Terran Dreadnoughts vanished and reappeared near Seln's position in perfect synchronization. They opened fire immediately, their kinetic weapons tearing through Scourge vessels that the Council ships had been struggling to damage. The relief was immediate but temporary, because the Scourge had learned from fighting humans too. New Scourge bioforms appeared, launching organic projectiles that sprayed acid on impact. The acid ate through Terran armor plating, corroding the thick defensive layers that had protected them at Tears of Andros. Other Scourge ships released electromagnetic pulses generated by specialized organs, disrupting human targeting systems and sensor arrays. They adapted to us, Chen said with growing horror. They studied our tactics and built counters. Zhang's jaw tightened. All ships switched to close-range combat protocols. They want to get inside our effective range. We'll make them regret it. The battle turned into a brutal close-quarters fight. Terran ships and Scourge vessels traded fire at ranges so close that explosions from destroyed ships damaged their neighbors. Council defensive lines bent and buckled under the pressure. Casualties mounted. Admiral Okoro of the Terran Second Fleet died when her flagship, the Gettysburg, was swarmed by dozens of smaller Scourge vessels. They tore through her ship's armor like it was paper. Her last transmission was a warning to her fleet to fall back and regroup. Vexarian watched his tactical display with growing despair. Red icons representing destroyed ships filled the screen. Council casualties had reached 40%. Humanity had lost almost a third of their fleet. And still the Scourge kept coming. "We're losing," he said quietly. Zhang didn't respond immediately. He was staring at his tactical display with an intensity that Chen recognized. It was the look of a man making a terrible decision. "Admiral Zhang, what are you thinking?" she asked carefully. Zhang pulled up a complex set of calculations on his personal display. "Our quantum drives create exotic particles when they activate. It's why our jumps are so violent compared to Council FTL. Most of the time, those particles dissipate harmlessly." "Most of the time," Chen repeated, understanding flooding through her. "But if you concentrate them, if we jump 900 ships into the same small area of space simultaneously, the exotic particle saturation would be off the scale." Zhang looked at Vexarian. "We'd need to do it at the center of their formation, right in the heart of the swarm." Vexarian's eyes widened. "That's suicide. Your ships would be surrounded, outnumbered 100 to 1. You'd never get out." "We'd have maybe 30 seconds before they overwhelmed us," Zhang agreed. "Just enough time to saturate the area and jump out. The particle concentration would destabilize local spacetime, create a temporary collapse, like a micro-black hole that pulls everything in and then evaporates." Chen grabbed his arm. "Marcus, you can't. The timing would have to be perfect. If even one ship is late jumping out, they'll be caught in the collapse. And there's no guarantee the rest will make it either. The exotic particles could interfere with the jump drives." Zhang looked at her and Chen saw the weight of command in his eyes. "Do you have a better idea?" She didn't. None of them did. Zhang opened fleet-wide communications. "All Terran vessels, this is Admiral Zhang. We're executing Protocol Prometheus. Jump on my mark to coordinates. I'm transmitting now. Fire everything you have, saturate the target zone with exotic particles and jump out on the second mark. Timing is critical. If you're late, we leave without you." There was a pause. Then one by one, every Terran captain acknowledged the order. They knew what Zhang was asking. They knew some of them wouldn't make it back. But they also knew this was their best chance to end this battle. Vexarian started to object, to argue that there had to be another way. But Zhang cut him off. "Admiral, when this works, I need you to mop up whatever's left of the Scourge." "Can you do that?" "When this works," Vexarian repeated. "Not if." Zhang smiled grimly. "If I thought it would fail, I wouldn't order it. We're human, Admiral. We're very good at achieving impossible things out of sheer stubbornness." The 900 remaining Terran Dreadnoughts pulled back from their individual engagements, forming up for one final synchronized jump. Council ships watched in confusion as their allies seemed to retreat. Then Zhang gave the order. "All ships, execute Prometheus. Jump now." 900 ships vanished simultaneously, and reality screamed. The Terran fleet appeared in the absolute center of the Scourge swarm, surrounded on all sides by hostile vessels. For a moment, the Scourge seemed stunned by the audacity of the move. Then they converged like antibodies attacking an infection. But the humans weren't there to fight. They were there to die if necessary to end this. Every Terran ship fired everything they had. Not at the Scourge ships, but at the empty space between them. Kinetic projectiles, nuclear warheads, plasma bursts, anything that would add energy and matter to the exotic particle saturation already building from 900 quantum drives operating in close proximity. The space around the Terran fleet began to shimmer and distort. Scourge ships that got too close simply came apart, torn by gravitational shears that shouldn't exist. The fabric of space-time was being stretched to its breaking point. "Saturation at critical levels," Chen reported, watching her displays with terrified fascination. "Jump now." "All ships jump," Zhang ordered. The Terran fleet vanished. Not all of them made it. 37 ships were too slow, their quantum drives damaged or their crews hesitating for just a second too long. They were caught in what came next. The exotic particle concentration reached critical mass. Space-time collapsed inward, creating a temporary singularity that lasted for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, 90% of the Scourge fleet was pulled into the collapse and compressed into an infinitesimal point. When space-time reasserted itself, the void was nearly empty. Debris floated where a massive fleet had been moments before. A few hundred Scourge vessels remained on the outer edges, damaged and disoriented. The Council fleet, following Zhang's orders, immediately moved in to destroy the survivors. Without the overwhelming numbers and coordination of the hive mind, the remaining Scourge were easy prey. On the Defiance Bridge, Chen checked casualty reports with shaking hands. 37 ships lost in the collapse. Another 23 heavily damaged. Total casualties, approximately 48,000 personnel. Zhang closed his eyes briefly. 48,000 people who trusted his orders and wouldn't be going home. The weight of it pressed down on him like gravity, but Vexarian's voice came through on a private channel. Admiral Zhang, the Scourge fleet is destroyed. We're moving on the breeding worlds now, using the strike plans your people developed. It's over. You won. At what cost? Zhang whispered. In the following weeks, the breeding worlds were sterilized. Terran kinetic bombardment turned them into lifeless rocks. Every Scourge egg, every larva, every trace of the hive mind was eradicated. The Council wanted to study them, to learn from them. Zhang refused. Some threats didn't deserve to be preserved. 3 months later, the Terran embassy on Xanthari Prime officially opened. Ambassador Chen, promoted after the war, stood beside Admiral Vexarian at the dedication ceremony. The embassy was designed in human architectural style, looking plain and functional next to the artistic curves of council buildings. Your people fight like demons, Vexarian said quietly, watching human and alien dignitaries mingle at the celebration. I don't know if I should be grateful or terrified that you're on our side, Chen smiled. Humanity has a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We watched the galaxy for 50 years, Admiral. We learned your languages, studied your mistakes, and built those sticks hoping we'd never need them. And when you did need them, we remembered another saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. She looked up at the stars visible through the embassy's transparent ceiling. Earth was alone for a long time. We know what it's like to look at the darkness and wonder if we're the only ones out here. We won't let anyone face that darkness alone again. Vexarian was quiet for a long moment. Then he raised his glass in a toast. To humanity, then. The species that proved primitives can be the most advanced people in the galaxy. Chen touched her glass to his. To the Council, for being wise enough to accept help when it was offered. Across the galaxy, Terran Dreadnoughts now patrolled alongside Council vessels. The names Thermopylae, Verdun, Hiroshima, and Stalingrad became symbols not of human wars but of galactic unity. Children of a dozen species learned about the Battle of the Veil Nebula in school, about the day a species emerged from the void and changed everything. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the Sol system, work was already beginning on new ships, new weapons, new technologies. Because humanity had learned one more lesson from the Scourge. The galaxy was bigger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And someone needed to stand watch against the darkness. Earth volunteered for that duty. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians. The species that had been dismissed as primitives had proven they were anything but. They had proven they were survivors, fighters, and most importantly, allies worth having. The galaxy had celebrated a victory that wasn't real. Then the Terran Dreadnoughts emerged from the void. And the real victory began.